I'm Jo Knowles, author of Still a Work in Progress. When I was really young, I think maybe in the first grade, we made books in school, and I wrote, some poetry about my pony, Smokey. But the story that I remember most, like really writing and finishing and getting any kind of feedback on, was really in college. I wrote a personal essay about my family, in particular my mom and dad. I was coming home from a party from when I was in college, and the lights were all off in the house, but I heard music coming from the living room, and they were there dancing. And so I wrote this essay about that, and it was called Living Room Music. And my college professor suggested that I submit it to our literary magazine at Simmons College. And so I did, and thinking there was no way I would ever get in, but I did. And what he didn't tell me was that if your piece is accepted, then you have to go to this reception and read it to a very large audience. And all my life, I was the shyest of the shy kids. I never raised my hand. I never wanted to speak in class. I had plenty of thoughts, but I never really dared to say anything. And so this was the first time I really had to speak to an audience. And so I went, and I was very nervous, and I read my essay, and I never looked up once the entire time because I was so scared. But when I finally did look up, many of the people in the audience were crying. It was the first time in my life that I felt like I really had a voice, and it was something that really triggered in me this desire to be a writer, I think, for the very first time, that maybe it was something I could do, because it was the first time I really felt this human interaction that I never had because I was always too shy to talk to other people. And so this was my way. I could do it through my writing. And so that was really the first moment I realized that I could do that. So for me, even though I was much older than the sort of what's your first experience writing, I think that for me is my most memorable. So. That's such a hard question, because I still, even now, I'm 45, I have trouble being proud of myself. It's something I struggle with. But I think the most joy I found in this book was really being able to find humor in a story that's sort of an underlying story about something painful. And yet I really enjoyed writing these scenes between the main character Noah and his two best friends, Sam and Ryan, and I just had so much fun. Anytime they came on the scene and I was writing about them and their friendly banter, I felt so good. I felt good about what was coming onto the page, and sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes it's just like such a push, but these characters, for me, this is the first book that I just really felt like I knew them so well right off the bat. So I guess I could say I'm proud of that relationship. It makes me happy, and I really love those three, as if they're real people. And I'm excited to have a book that has a lot more humor in it for the first time. And as my agent said, there might be tears, but not as many as you and Harry's. Oh gosh, okay, everybody. Now, I know that's the answer everyone wants to say, is everyone will love my book. But no, I think that, kids who are sort of that tween age, boys and girls, who like realistic stories, who like funny stories, but who also like to learn about other people's experiences, even if they haven't had those themselves, who just like to have a story with a little bit of heart, or, kids who like to cry, or not. I mean, I think anyone who loves to read real life stories will like it, adults too. The best advice I ever got was from Jennifer Richard Jacobson, who wrote Small as an Elephant and other good books too. And she and I were at a writing retreat years and years ago before I sold my first book. And I was actually working on Lessons from a Dead Girl. And we were sitting in a circle, a bunch of writers, and we were asked to give one piece of advice. And when I got to JJ, she said that before she hands in a draft to an editor, she asks herself, is it true yet? And if she can't answer that honestly, then she knows it's not ready to be seen by anyone else. And when she said that, I burst into tears because I had been struggling with revising Lessons from a Dead Girl for quite a while, and just couldn't figure out what it was that was missing from that book. And I realized at that moment that I needed to kind of go to the next deeper level and really be honest with Lane's true emotions. And I hadn't been able to do that because I was scared. And it was as if at that moment, JJ gave me permission to really go where I needed to go in that book. And I've carried it with me with every book. I ask myself that question, is it true yet? And I mean, what that means is, like, have you really uncovered the emotional truth of this book? Have you really gone down to the underbelly of what you really want to say? Not that this book is about, a kid who's living with a family secret. It's more about it's about a kid who feels helpless. So there's this sort of overtone of what a story is about, but then there's also this understory that's much deeper and harder to get at when you're the writer. And once you can do that, that's when the book is true. But it's hard to get there. I think it takes several drafts to really figure out what it is your character is hiding and why is this experience that they're having difficult. And usually it doesn't have to do with the physical problem of the situation. It has to do with what they're carrying themselves inside. And so once I can figure that out, then it feels true to me. So this is 2 responses in the same day, and this is why I think they're particularly memorable. Usually if I get a letter from a kid, that just makes my day, my week, whatever. I love hearing from readers. But one day I received an email from a teacher who I had met through one of the conferences I'd been at, and we had become friends. And she was using Jumping Off Swings and Lessons from a Dead Girl in her reader circle in a high school English class. And she emailed me to say that the books were being challenged and might be removed from her classroom, and she was trying to fight the good fight and keep them because she was seeing a positive effect on her students. And so this was my first experience as an author having a book challenged, and she was telling me how awful it was because the principal was involved and had said some pretty unpleasant things, and I just felt so uncomfortable. I'm the kid who doesn't like to get in trouble. I don't like to, be called out or have attention brought to me, especially negative attention. And so I felt like I was getting in trouble. I really felt like I had done something wrong. And so I spent that whole morning just thinking, I can't believe this is happening and I don't understand. And then that afternoon, I received an email from a mother who told me that her older daughter had read Jumping Off Swings and Lessons from a Dead Girl and had given them to her younger daughter, who was I think 14 at the time, who hated to read. So she had this older daughter who loved to read and the younger daughter who never read, had never even finished a book in her life. And she had finished both books, and they were the first 2 books she'd ever finished. And they'd gone on to have this great family discussion about all the issues that were raised in both books. And so it just couldn't have come at a better time, because here I was questioning, did I do the wrong thing? Like maybe I should have toned down something. I don't know. I just started really feeling insecure about myself as a writer. So to get that letter that afternoon, it just sort of confirmed, nope, you did the right thing and you're touching kids, and that's way more important than a principal who has issues. And so while I respect principals and their opinions, I think that readers should be the ones who decide what they want to read, especially when they're teenagers. I think they're old enough to figure that out. And so it was this very emotional day, but in the end, everything was confirmed for me. So I always think about that when I'm writing now, and I say, oh, should I put this in? And I think about that principal. And then I say to myself, no, don't think about him. Think about the kid. Think about who you're really writing for, and be honest. I keep going back to, is it true? And I think if you are going to write about the teen experience in realistic fiction, then you have to be as honest as you can and not censor yourself, because it's just not genuine. So I think about that day all the time, and I'm really grateful for it now, actually. Well, Curly is inspired by a real cat named Lily, who is owned by Holly Black. And we used to go to New Year's parties at Holly's, and Lily would be there dressed up, and I would hold her, and I just loved the cat. That's the side story to say that I wanted this school to have a therapy pet. They just bring out a smile on a kid's face, and so I wanted that in the book because really these are all kids who need that. In particular, the main character. And he really bonds with her. So.